Product is completely ran by volunteers. We have one here, Nick. Thanks for volunteering for us, and Wade. But first off, I want to thank all of you for coming. We also want to thank Charmada for providing the menu and amazing food and coffee. Thanks for giving me that. So if you want to come up and just tell us a little bit about your company, and then we'll turn it over to Wade just shortly after.
So, yeah, thanks for coming. In a nutshell, Charmada is a product experience measurement platform. We started off as a usability testing tool, and we were competing with the user testings and user reviews of the world. And then we eventually realized that usability testing is just one piece of puzzle, right? Like I only get feedback on the things that I test, which leaves a larger question: am I testing the right things? Am I looking in the right places? So what we strive to build is an end-to-end product measurement platform where you're able to look at sort of top of the funnel metrics, like marketing level metrics, down to individual session replay type stuff, and use that to inform your usability testing tool. And then obviously a bunch of tools that help analyze the videos roster, and then use that to, based on your design changes and stuff that you make based on your feedback, see whether or not that moves the needle with the other metrics on your real-time site. And that's our platform in a nutshell. And I invite all of you to check it out. And if you're at this event, message me. I'd love to set you up with a free trial or what have you. But other than that, thank you so much for coming. I'm really excited for this talk because I feel like even though we are a tool that sets to product people, we're not immune to like scope bloat and feature load and delay timelines. And I think this is going to be really, really useful. And for everyone, please stay home as many sandwiches as you need. I have clearly Uber order. So enjoy it. And thanks so much for coming.
Yeah, thank you. All right. So now we're going to turn it over to Wade. But before we do, we want to tell you about another event we're going to do next week. And I should have pulled this up. I apologize. But it just got announced today. It's on our Slack channel. So we're going to be talking about how we can empower mental health and technology. So that will be hosted down in Lehigh at a work. So feel free to join us there. But now we'll turn it over to Wade and let you take it away.
Awesome. Thank you. This will be an interesting talk. I think it's more of a case study than a talk necessarily. Like he had said, it came out of a conversation in the group chat, Slack group, where we were talking about some process, and I had shared some things about what we were doing, and everybody's like, I want more, and I said, all right, well, I'm happy to share with you. So I hope it's what you're looking for today. Thought I'd also share some principles with you. I hope that's not maybe missing the depth that you're looking, but I'll go through some of that, and then we'll get into some of the details. And I hope I go as deep as you'd like as well. And if we have time, I'm happy to even open up our Notion instance and show you live exactly how we're doing some of these things. I'm open to just winging it on some of this stuff, whatever's most useful to you today. So anyway, a year ago, I started a new opportunity with a company called Smart Access, a leading product there. It is a Canadian-based startup, and we are building tools for frontline onboarding and training and motivation in distribution centers. So we're a key step in the supply chain, and we're in all of Home Depot's distribution centers all across the United States. That's kind of funny. It's a Canadian company, but we're in all of the Home Depot buildings. So you think about the people using our product are unloading semis and moving boxes around all day long with forklifts. And so our product is something that is in hand, on the floor, allowing them to learn how to do their job and to get help in the moment when they need it. So when I arrived, and as part of my due diligence, as I was getting to know the team and seeing if this would be a good fit for us and how I might be able to help them, I was hearing about some of these problems. So the team was complaining a lot about it just being an endless hamster wheel. You know, that's pretty common for startups. But they said that projects were just going on and on and on. They were getting disrupted all of the time for things that would just come up and need to be solved immediately. They also told me that they didn't know why they were working on what they were working on. And we have a very small customer success team, about 3 to 4 people that work really closely with our customers. But especially engineering, didn't know why they wanted to be part of that. And so we talked about all of these different things, and I had the opportunity to have a fresh start. You don't get that very often at all. When you come into a company, they usually have a process. And it takes a lot to change it if you're just going to improve it a little bit here, you can do that. And like when I was at Workfront, we were growing so fast that every 6 months we were changing our process, but it was changing it in refinement. Whereas here I had the opportunity to do a wholesale wipe the slate clean and start something new. That's pretty rare, and I was excited about that. And the good news is it's been going well. It's a year in now, and we consider it a success. So that's what the story is today, is me sharing with you what we implemented and why, and how we're actually doing it. So I just wanted to start with this quote. If you have not read The Messy Middle, I strongly recommend it. It is a massive book, but you also don't have to read it straight through. It's basically like 100 blog posts kind of a book, but it is excellent. And he says the conundrum about process is we all need some, but too much is lethal. The more aligned your team is, the less process you need. And so I just wanted to start with this because I am a big believer in that. It is very easy to over-engineer it, and that the key is alignment, not control. And so just some principles there is that if you are in a position where you're able to influence your process, make sure that you're installing it for your team and not for you. It's very easy to think that I want to be able to control this. I want to make sure that things are not happening that I'm not aware of, or that things aren't going to go off the rails and stuff. And that's the wrong way to approach a process. So, all right, so moving along. I talk to a lot of people about process. This comes up all of the time for me. I don't know necessarily why, but as I'm going to lunch with other product leaders and having conversations online, it's always like, what are you doing and what's important and where do you start? And something I have changed a lot in my position of it. If you would have talked to me 10 years ago, I would have had much stronger opinions around process of this is the way. You have to do this. And I've learned though over the years that there is no one true process. Not only is there not one true process for between different organizations, but there isn't even one true process for one organization throughout its life. It depends on the product you're selling and the industry that you're in and the stage of your business. And so it's always going to depend. And so it's just important that you realize that, and that I think one of the key jobs of a product leader is to be able to assess the needs of the team and implement the right process for the right time. That said, however, I do hold some strong principles that I believe are for almost all modern product organizations should adhere to. So however you wire things up, whether you're doing 2-week sprints or whether you're doing Kanban or whatever, I do believe really strongly in empowered product teams, the product trio, and also dual track. All three of these are kind of my non-negotiables. I feel like that they're foundational for a good, healthy, successful product teams. And a few more things that are not my 3 pillars, but are important, and that is a bold, clear, compelling vision. That is key for that alignment that I was talking to, inspiring the team, and a lightweight, transparent roadmap of outcomes. I really swing towards lightweight and short term. You're never going to see me building a 3-year roadmap. I think it is an absolute mistake and waste of time. I don't believe in Jira jockeys and PMs spending all of their time grooming backlogs and all of these things, I think it's a waste of time. A culture of goal setting and also guidelines for making decisions. And so these are things that are really, really foundational. And then this came out of the past year. So this is new to me. And so that's why I'm saying I'm forming stronger opinions on these things. I don't know how foundational they are. Like the first three, I kind of feel like they're foundational for any modern product organization. These last ones, I don't know for sure, but man, I'm really liking them. And you'll see how we're using these in the presentation. The first one's the circuit breaker. And what that is basically it's just a stop. Is that it prevents things from going on, and it is a commitment from the team, however you orchestrate it in your process, that there is a stop. It doesn't matter if we're only 96% done, we stop. And I think there's power in that, and you'll see how we're using it. And then the other is vertical scopes. And actually, I'm going to wait. I was about to jump ahead and really start digging into it because I want to. I want to tell you all that. I'm going to wait. You'll learn about that more in just a few minutes. All right, so here we go. Was able to go in and audit their process, interview everybody on the team, and start thinking about how we would be able to build out the system. And this is what I brought to the team and proposed, and we started working at. So the very first thing I presented to the team, sorry, there's a lot of words to start up with, is 3 things that I felt like were really important for this particular team. And that was considering and addressing the risks up front. There was very little of that going on. As I'd said before, projects that were just going on, and then there were all these drive-bys, all of these things that were just coming in that were always a 4-alarm fire that needed to be done. And it really, there wasn't a lot of thought around the impact that it would have. What things would it affect, other things in the product that would affect things. So we needed to have a way to be able to back up and assess that. And then collaboratively, it was fairly waterfall. It's a small team, it's a startup, and so there was communication, but it was a lot of, please do this, designer designs it, and engineer banks it out. And so we needed that to happen collaboratively. And then we also needed to focus on the actual outcomes instead of just the output, right? Thinking about why are we actually doing this and making sure that the team understands it. Because just because the CEO or one of the other founders or customer success understood and had that empathy and the connection to the customer, if the rest of the team doesn't have that and doesn't understand it, they're not gonna be able to solve it in the right way. So that's where we started. The next thing here is what I call a roadmap. Now this may not look like a roadmap to you, and I always enjoy sharing this when I talk to somebody because it kind of makes them think differently, but I like to consider roadmaps as being vertical and not horizontal. Most people think of horizontals as these long horizontal Gantt charts. I don't use any Gantt charts. I hate Gantt charts. And for me, your roadmap shouldn't contain features with dates and dependencies. For me, this is my roadmap. The roadmap starts with our vision. It then goes into strategic themes, and then into nearer term outcomes, and then into bets, and down into the individual releases. Now we started, this is one thing that we did pivot on, is we started doing OKRs, which is that objective layer. Found out it was too heavy. We're small enough that we didn't need it, and it wasn't providing any value. So we're skipping that step right now. We're going straight from our vision and our strategy down into our bets. But this process was very similar to what we were using at Workfront, where we were at a much larger scale. So this is what I call my roadmap, and I include the vision in it, and then I include it all the way down to the bets that we're making. We also have something that I'll show you in a bit, an example of an actual now, next, later roadmap that's a little more traditional, that you'd be a little more familiar with, but still, these are not commitments with delivery dates on them. So you might be wondering, man, do you have any sort of horizon on that? How do you communicate that to sales and to customer success? We do. We commit to to 6 weeks at a time. And then beyond that, it's in those horizons of now, next, and later. So just a few more thoughts around roadmap is that is often different than the way most people are approaching a roadmap, in addition to it being vertical like that. It's a statement of how we're going to realize our vision. And it's a strategic communication tool. It's communicating our intent, not our commitment. And that's what's so different about it. You know, when you look at that visual that I gave you of it being vertical like that, that's why it contains the vision, because it's where we intend to go, not our plan for getting there. And that last note on there, I can't take credit for it, but I don't know where I got it. But I love the statement that it's a prototype of our product strategy. And that should resonate with any good product person, right? Okay, so moving along, what are empowered product teams? And I hope this isn't just putting you all to sleep, that everybody already is well aware of and sold. But if you're not, let's talk a little bit about empowered product teams. What in the world is that? Well, generally in modern product organizations, you're divided up into teams. Sometimes they call them squads, product teams, Scrum teams. The difference is that each one of these are co-led by a PM, a designer, and an engineering lead. And that requires you to have different staffing than a lot of organizations do. For a lot of organizations, that means you've got a lot more designers than a lot of organizations do. And that might sound crazy, especially if you're trying to sell this to the business. But the reason that is different is because in a modern product team, designers are doing a lot more than just pushing pixels around. They are playing a strategic role, and together, those three people are bringing each of their strengths and biases and their different perspective to be able to successfully solve these problems that you're giving to them. And the reason they're called empowered teams is because we're telling them or inspiring them about what to solve through our vision and our strategy, then telling them what to do. And that freaks a lot of people out. A lot of executives struggle with that concept of saying, what do you mean we don't know what they're going to do? Well, we do. We are agreeing on a vision, but you should be concerned about the why and not why we're doing and where the business should be going, and less so about the actual details of what's going to build, because it's the outcome that you want. Take these people that are closer to the customer and let them figure out, allow them to be closer to the customer, and then allow them to use their strengths to figure out how to solve that. So that's a quick on the product teams. I was talking about each of them bringing their different strengths together. That's where you get the great Venn diagram of visibility, usability, viability, usability, and feasibility coming together from each of those. So let's talk a little bit now about dual track. Is that a new concept to anyone here? Dual track Agile? Cool. Not sure how much I'm sharing here that people are either practicing already or really familiar with and wishing that you could. So there's a lot of organizations that are getting on this and starting to do this well, but there's a lot out there that are still focused on output. And in those organizations, most of the focus is on building software, right? Now that might not sound weird, because that's what we're trying to do. Most of us in tech are trying to build something and to ship it. So what is discovery? If that term is new to you, it's figuring out what to build. And you might say, all right, well, in my past, someone's just told me what to do. Well, in an empowered product team and an empowered organization, we are pushing that down, as I said, into the team and making this an official part of our process. And so delivery is building it. And what is the goal? The goal in the delivery track is to ship fast. We want to release things out to the market as quickly as we possibly can. What would the goal be over in discovery? it is learning fast. And so if you look at what's happening on either side, and credit for this image goes to Basecamp, this is kind of the two different tracks here, where you've got an idea and it starts to form, takes shape, and then in the delivery track is where we then start to build that. And when I talked about the vertical scopes earlier, this is where I'm starting to introduce that to you, is over on the other side, we are building incrementally in valuable pieces that the customer can actually use. So if you think about breaking down a project, we've been doing this for 40 plus years, ever since we've been building software, is say, okay, how we're gonna break this down into pieces. But too often, you break that down into layers where you're working on all of these deep pieces and you can't actually use the thing until the end. And so the difference is, instead of working through it this way, work through it this way in these vertical slices. And that means that everything from back end or APIs to the front end to everything is sliced in a way that there is the smallest piece that we can get that can actually be released, that someone can actually use and can actually get value out of it. And this has been one of the hardest things the past year for us to learn as a team. It's hard. It's so easy to say, oh, okay, well, let's break that down, and it's got to do all these things. And so in parallel, maybe I'm a back-end engineer. I'm going to start writing this API, and at the same time writing this, or I've scoped them all out, and I'm going to start writing them all at the same time. Well, what if we got halfway through this project and we figured out we were going the wrong direction? Or what if we needed to pivot slightly? Well, you've worked on all of this stuff, and it might just need to be thrown away. But if instead we can work on a piece and deliver it and start learning, and we can start working on the next piece and deliver that and learning, and then the next piece, and another item is we get through all of this. What if it's still on track and all of this stuff is golden, we love, but we run out of time? Well, if we'd been working on it this way, we'd have spent all this time and only have a half-built thing that has to go sit on the shelf. But if we worked through it in these vertical slices, we've built this much. We may not have gotten to our full vision of what we think this could be, but we've finished something that's already in the product that our customers are getting value of, and we can move on. And so that's the power of these vertical slices. This is another way to look at product and discovery. This should be very familiar to anyone who's ever seen the double diamond before. This is just my version of double diamond. I like roller coasters instead of diamond. Just kidding. But just another way to look at that, of the concept of where you are discovering and then defining the problem, and then discovering, defining solutions, right? And then going into the development track. So this is how we think about it at Smart Access. This is kind of, we had to visually represent our process. It's doing these things, but the key here is that these things are happening in parallel, and that's where we're going to start diving in and showing you the actual mechanics of how we do this. One more quote from Jeff Gottfeld, I absolutely love. Our goal is not to create a deliverable; it's to change something in the world, to create an outcome. We start with assumptions instead of requirements. We create and test hypotheses. We measure to see whether we've achieved our desired outcomes. It's a pretty simple quote, but I just love that our goal is not to create a deliverable. It's so easy to get caught up in shipping and finish these things and deploying. And it doesn't matter if we deploy code if it actually isn't providing value to the customers. And not even just that they're using it. I think it should go beyond that too, because they could be using it because they don't have a better option, but they're not getting value out of it, right? They're being forced to use it, whether that's budget or I don't know, regulation or whatever it might be. And so it's critical that your team is focused on that. Okay, so that's good. We've got some good basic principles now, right, around how we think the team would operate. But there were some really important questions. Is how do we repeat this? And is it single threaded, meaning is there just one team doing this at a time? You know, when I was at Workfront, we had 26 product teams all running. How do you handle that many teams working together and bring all of that together? We're nowhere near that big at Smart Access, but how do we make that happen? And so, let's see here. As you start to expand and you have more than one team, one of the first principles of dual track is that each team needs to be responsible for their own tracks. So it's not like we are running, this is a really important thing to clarify. It's not that the business is running dual track. It's that each individual team, and we're talking a 2 pizza team, right? PM, designer, engineer, 4 to 5, maybe 7 developers. Each of them are running their own discovery and their own delivery, and they're doing it simultaneously. And it is really important. It's something I say all the time is that if you outsource your research, you outsource your empathy. And it's really hard for the teams to really understand that if they're not experiencing it first time. Now, I will admit it's a little harder on the team, on that trio, to be managing both things. It's more work. Instead of just focus on shipping, you know, if I was a project manager and being able to handle both these, it's more work. And I've got an incredible designer on my team who still, after doing it for a year, stresses about it a little bit. In our one-on-ones, we talk about it. It comes up regularly where he says, it's still hard for me because I'm getting pulled in 2 directions. Now, at our startup, he's actually doing a lot more of an IC role too than it was at a larger scale at Workfront, right? And that's the same thing with engineering. We don't have a dedicated engineering lead at Smart Access. Whereas at Workfront, we had these empowered teams that were all inside of portfolios, and we actually then had a trio at the director level that was over portfolios, and we had trio up at the executive level. So we were representing that all the way down the organization. And so you had an engineering lead that could focus just on this because they weren't an IC that was cranking out code all day long. So it's a little harder, but I do believe that it's worth the effort because I have seen the results from it. Okay, so here's a visual for you. You're running in parallel, discovery and delivery, and you often hear velocity, and so I love using that term for learning too. Is over in delivery, we often talk about what is our development velocity, and the discovery track is what is our learning velocity. How fast can we learn? How fast can we validate those ideas? And so there's a few little, if we go back to that roller coaster visual that I showed you a few minutes ago, we're identifying the most impactful customer problems to solve. We're then defining initiatives that maximize market need and business value. And then we're testing hypotheses until the best solution to the job has been discovered. So a lot of learning, a lot of talking to customers, a lot of being as lean as possible. What is the absolute fast way we can validate these ideas? And then the delivery track, this is very familiar. Building the solution, bringing it to market, and validating then it with actual customer use cases. So what does it look like though? Well, it looks a little bit like this. Because these things are dual tracks. And these things are happening simultaneously. And so the discovery work is feeding into the delivery track the entire time. And so it is not like they go do one at one time, or that they're like living a second life and totally separated where the team goes off and does discovery activity. We are pulling the team across as we're talking to customers and we're getting the idea and getting the feedback coming in. And if we learn something along the way, it can disrupt the delivery track. It is not like it is completely protected and happening in isolation. Here's a horrible slide. this is presentation bad practice here. That's a lot of text on there. I don't expect you to read all of that. But a lot of these slides were used for internal here when we're presenting this team. So the content's important there for them to understand. But I'll just pull out a few things. I've hit on a few of them. It's 2 tracks, not 2 teams, and that it should be handled, each team doing it. It should be happening in parallel. But the thing also is that it creates room for failure and helps them to be able to validate ideas that in a lot of teams you don't see that happening, because the teams sit down, they groom their backlog, they plan a sprint, they write up user stories, they feed all of that in, and it just seems to go on and on and on. And so when you create this, it changes your culture and gives you the opportunity, because you're not just, it's not just lip service where you tell your team, yeah, we really want you to talk to customers, we really want you to have empathy. Each week we talk about this every single week. What discovery are you doing? What's happening in this track? And so it's different. We have a very different culture than a lot of companies do. So, all right, back to our diagram then. Does this just go on forever and ever? Both tracks are happening. They're feeding each other. But this is the next thing that I wanted to try at Smart Access that I felt would help us a lot. And this is where the circuit breaker comes in, is almost everybody on the planet that works in tech works in 2-week sprints. It's like the de facto, and I feel like that's a mistake, not 2-week sprints, but that everyone does it blindly. I feel like it's almost robotic. It's like, hey, we're developing software. How do you do that? 2-week sprints. Is that the right thing for you to build? Is that what your team needs? Are you building hardware? Are you building software? How old are you? How mature is your team? How much direction and hand-holding do they need? How much can you get out of their way and let them run? Like, I feel like there's a lot of factors. And I felt like what the team needed right now was more build time. Because as I've experienced Scrum through a long career, and I've been doing this for almost 25 years, I've seen a lot of wasted time where every 2 weeks, it feels like almost a quarter of your time is just spent meeting. The whole team's in a conference room doing nothing but talking to each other. They're grooming the backlog and they're planning the cycle. And then afterwards they're having a retrospective and like, it's just, why are we doing this every single 2 weeks and wasting a quarter of our time when we have people writing code? And so that was the first thing that I wanted to do. And a lot of the principles that you'll see here come from Basecamp, but we didn't adopt it wholesale. If you haven't read the book Shape Up, I'd recommend it. But I'd also say that for most people, it's not the right thing for them. Basecamp has a very, very unique culture. And the way that they approach their product is different. They're building their product for themselves. They are their number one customer. That is not the case for most people. And they also move a lot slower than a lot of companies do. And but I think there's some really good principles in the book, so I'd recommend reading it. And one of the things they do there is they work in 6-week cycles instead of 2 weeks, and then they have a 2-week cool down after every cycle. And so we decided to try that, and it has worked wonderfully for us. I love it. It means that all of those agile ceremonies only happen every 8 weeks instead of every 2 weeks. We still do the traditional Scrum things where we still have a retrospective, we still have a planning. We just don't do it every 2 weeks. It allows us to get a lot more done. The team loves it. A couple other things that I don't agree with that, or I don't like, or works great for that, but I don't think is right for what we're doing, is they're a little waterfall. They don't do dual track, and they don't have the trio, and their teams are very small, and they're not durable. I like teams to stick together a little bit longer. I think there's value in teams getting to know each other and becoming a little bit more of a little bit of domain knowledge. Now, I think a lot of companies leave them intact for too long, but I think at least 6 months is good to keep a team together. Basecamp basically works off a pool model where every 8 weeks with every new cycle, they come and they say, what are we working on? Who are the right people for that? And they grab those people and assign them. Now, there's value in that too. It's not like it's wrong because you can take the right people in the right time and who's available. But you might be working with a different person every time, and it's hard for a PM and a designer and an engineer to really start to click. And there's really good magic that happens when you get to know each other and you can just anticipate what the other person needs and communicate well. They also are a little bit waterfall in the sense that they have one person that shapes the work, figures out what they're doing, and then they hand it to other people who go and do it. And that just, I don't like that at all. Like I had said before, you need the people that are figuring it out, also people that are going to do it. But I do love their 6-week thing. We're doing it. So this is what it kind of looks like. So we go and we run 6 weeks doing discovery and delivery at the same time. And then we get into our cool down. And our cool down is 2 weeks. And there are a couple of things that happen in the cool down. We reset the system. We do our planning. We squash bugs. We then plan and make our bets. And we also have hackathon. So every 8 weeks, we're having a hackathon. Not for 2 full weeks, but we're also not very prescriptive about it either. But as it works out with the planning we do, the bug squashing we do, it works out to maybe 3 days or so. And that's healthy. That is, if you added up those days and, took 365 and divided it, you hear about companies like Google with their 20% time. That's a good, healthy amount, 3 days every 8 weeks that we're doing that. And that's the time that they can work on whatever they want. They can shave off rough edges in the product, explore new things. Like this last hackathon, we had somebody that came with and what do you guess?
AI?
Yes, of course. I was pretty confident somebody would get it. Of course, somebody came with an idea of doing something with AI. But it's awesome. It actually was very applicable. It wasn't just a crazy thing. It was very applicable to our product, right? But that's what happens in the hackathon. I love it. So, do we wait and squash no bugs until the cooldown? No. If a P1 comes in, we're dropping everything and we're getting it done, right? And so we've got a couple levels. P1 is the system exploded. P2 means that we need to drop it and work on it right now. P3 means it needs to be done within the next 10 days. And then everything else goes into the bucket that we squash during cooldown. But our goal too is that when we leave cooldown, we don't have any bugs. So you guys, I'm sure, are familiar with companies that have backlogs into infinity of bugs. And the way that we address that is as soon as cooldown starts. Or right before cooldown starts, we get together with a QA manager and engineering lead, and we look at how many are in there, and we ask the question every time, do we feel like we can tackle all of these in the cooldown? And if we don't, then we plan that work into the next cycle so that we can knock it off. And if anything isn't ranked in one of our priorities, we actually throw it away. We don't have any bug. If we don't plan on taking care of a bug within 8 weeks, it's gone. There's no point in maintaining this list that you're never gonna get to. So how does that? Okay, so that's that running through that cycle over cycle, 8 weeks over 8 weeks. This is what it looks like with multiple teams. Each team's running their own running their own tracks. But we are all in sync. So we're all doing cool down at the exact same time. So basically the whole system runs, we stop, reset the system, take a breather and celebrate, and then cue everything back up and then hit it and run through it again. Few more principles here that are key to the way that we're working. And that is this protected discovery and delivery time. So we plan the cycle, And then we're in, and we're committed. And it's gonna take something really big to break that. And we've been good about it. It's only been once or twice where we have broken the cycle. It's basically we're committing to 6 weeks, and then we let the team work. Instead of someone swooping and pooping and coming in and having some random thing they want to work on. It has to be big. We let the team work for 6 weeks and get stuff done. It's awesome. We also do not assign them tasks. We, as part of the plan, we plan out what the project is, and I'll get to this in a bit, but we've shaped that so you can see what is the intended outcome, and we even talk about some solutions of how this might look. But that's all that's all that the team. And when I say we, that almost sounded like someone else was handing it to the team. The trio is shaping that, and they guide it. They don't necessarily do it alone, but they're responsible for it. They involve other people as they're shaping it, but then that is what the company commits to doing. And now the team has the autonomy to go and actually figure out what that looks like in the end. Other things, outcomes over output, fixed time, variable scope. That's the whole concept that we're talking about right now. Almost every company is the opposite of that, right? It is fixed scope and variable time, and things drag on and on and on. Or you set due dates that are unreasonable because an executive just made it up, and now it's not gonna, you're not gonna hit it anymore, right? But we are the exact opposite. We have a hard deadline. And that's exactly what the circuit breaker is that I was talking about before, is when we hit the end of 6 weeks, we're done. And it takes something really big for us to roll over. This last cycle, we actually rolled over a few days because our QA lead was out sick for an entire week. And so we were struggling to get everything tested. And so we did roll over into cool down by a couple of days just for deployment to get the stuff out. That's all right. We're human. That's how things roll. Bets, not backlogs. We don't have a backlog. Not at all. We do not have a Jira backlog full of ideas that we spend time curating. We have a place in a database where we store feedback, and then the rest of it all, and another database where we store research that we do. And then we have our roadmap that I've already presented to you. And that freaks a lot of people out, but I am a firm believer that if it's important, it'll come back up. And I have seen it play out. Because this is the first time this past year where I've worked for a company that does not have a backlog. I've dreamed about it for a long time, but it's been beautiful, and it's true. Instead of spending time being a Jira jockey and just prioritizing this over that, over this, over that, and all this stuff is such a waste of time. Just let the process play out. And the things that are important will come back up, and they do. Every 8 weeks, the important things bubble back up through conversation and all the different channels and everything. It's great. We do have some decentralized lists, meaning that each one of the teams has the things they're focused on and they're working on, but it's empowered down into the team. And done means deployed. That one has also been hard too, is with the team. They were used to celebrating that we're done. And I love the quote, meaning like, well, it works on my laptop. Well, great. We'll then ship your laptop out to the customer. if you've heard that one before, I love that. It's like, but it doesn't matter at all if it works on your laptop, right? It has to be QA'd, it has to be tested, it has to be deployed. The customer has to be using it, right? Like that's what it means. So I've covered a bunch of these, but not quite all yet. But I'm getting to them right now, and that is how we actually operate now. Pitches, the betting table, bets, our show and tell, and our cool down. So this is how we shape the work. During discovery, the team writes one-pagers, and a one-pager is basically our way to articulate the idea that we have and to track the research that we're doing. So, and I am a big believer in writing. I think that there is power in being able to write things down and for people to be able to read that and provide feedback on it. So the trio sits down either in real time together through a shared screen, or they do it asynchronously, collaborating on a document, and we have templates for these, where they write out the assumption. What is our hypothesis? We use job stories to define what the customer's currently trying to do and what their problem is. And then we brainstorm on some features, even right at the beginning. How could we solve this? And what are like rabbit holes that we might get into, and what are no-goes that we just don't want to touch that, and talk through that. And then we have a learning log there, where as we learn and we test and we validate things, we write in, our hypothesis was validated, now we're going to try this. Or learn good thing here, we're going to double down on that. Then, after we work through this, as the trio is working through the cycle on these one-pagers, we're starting to gain confidence on things. This is showing more and more promise. And then as we get towards the end of the cycle, usually about a week and a half before the cycle, then it is pitch time. And that's when we start writing a pitch. And what a pitch is a separate document. It's similar, but now we're actually now pitching this to the business. We're saying, we've done our homework, we believe that this is the right thing to do, and it's the right time to do it. And the time's important there too. It's not just that we should, but we should do it now. And we write the documents, we send them out to the whole team. Everyone gets several days to review, but at least 48 hours. So we get them out as quickly as we can, but 48 hours before what's called the betting table, they're locked down and everybody reviews these documents. So now the betting table is us talking about or debating these things, not having to present them for the first time. So you can see all the things that are included in a pitch. It also contains high-level visuals, some sketches, where you're talking about like what are the core elements that we came up with. And the more you can have that in some fat marker sketches, it helps people to visualize what you're proposing. So then coming back to the process here, it looks something like this, right? So we're writing a one-pager. We have show and tell every 2 weeks, and we rotate every other week show and tell and a VOC meeting. And I'll explain what that is in just a minute. It stands for voice of customer. And then, so every 2 weeks, we're having a show and tell. So this is the 6 weeks, show and tell. And at the end, we submit our pitches. And then as we head into cool down, that's when we have the betting table. And then we decide on projects and solidify the cycle plan. So what is and this is what it looks like if you, with all 3 teams running across that, doing it. And that, honestly, when I look at this, I was like, wow, that looks like complicated, and like there's a whole bunch of stuff. It's actually pretty simple. It's we do it every week, go through the process, and it's pretty simple. So now I've got some actual screenshots. I've got a couple more slides here of just screenshots so you can actually see us actually doing this. Hopefully this is helpful. So if we come back to this, we have our vision and our mission and a strategy statement for the business that takes care of the top there. We're currently skipping objectives, like I said, and then we also have this roadmap. This is an actual screenshot from Notion. This is our roadmap. Someone actually pressed us on well, I hear you that it includes your vision and things, but what is the actual? This is an actual roadmap, and you can see there are no dates on here. It is just now, next, later. This is what we're working on right now in the current cycle. This is what we're planning on doing next. But when I say planning on it, I use the roadmap to inspire the team. So these are not things we've committed to, because we don't even know what we're going to do until we have the next betting table and we plan the next cycle. This is me as the head of product saying, team, I'm taking our strategy and I'm now breaking our strategy down at a smaller level, and I'm saying, if we want to get there, this is where I think we need to go. That's it. That's all this document's for. So here's an example. I know you probably can't read that, so that's why I did that zoom in thing on the side. So this is an example of one of our one-pager templates. This is what it actually looks like in Notion. It's awesome because we've got the template in there. You click a button, it pops the thing open, and I've got all of the prompts in here. So for each section, like an assumption, it's the problem we're trying to solve, and there's just the reminder in there of what to do. And the stuff in red block is a Mad Libs fill in the blank if it's useful. But you don't even have to use it. Sometimes we write it exactly that way. Other times we write it other ways. But we go through and fill this out, and it's such an awesome way to guide the planning and the work and document it, and for visibility across the rest of the organization. Anybody in the whole company at any time can come in and look at these documents, and they can see. And I send out a weekly update every week to the business, and I link to these. And so I'm encouraging everyone from sales to customer success, anywhere, to come in and look at these and see what the team's working on. Then here's what a pitch looks like. And so the same thing, we've got the prompts in here, come in and we fill this out, and it really pushes the team. How is this going to drive us towards our business metrics? How are we going to measure this? Even down to what dependencies exist or security, like in anything we fill this out. Then here's what the betting table is. So usually it's the second or third day into the cool down. We get on Zoom, and today it's the entire company. The entire company is invited. Not everyone has to attend, but everyone's invited. I don't think that would work if you have 1,000 employees, but it's working great for us. And we use Miro for this, and we've got this board that we repeat all the time. And this is actually our last one. So this isn't even hypothetical. This is an actual screenshot of what we're doing. We had 6 pitches that were presented, and those blocks across the top represent those 6 pitches, and they're actually linked to the actual pitch document. And the little red blocks underneath are tags. I must have been at the wrong Zoom level when I took it, because the text inside the tag is missing. But it shows you what the proposed appetite is for that. And so they would say something like 1 week, 3 weeks, 2 weeks, anywhere from 1 to 6 weeks. And we don't estimate time. We talk about appetite. That's something else that comes from Shape Up. And I would say that's the second thing that our team has really struggled with, especially those that have been working in tech a little bit longer. It's really uncomfortable to not talk about how long is this going to take. Because the way we work is it doesn't matter how long it's going to take. We're going to slice this up I did it the wrong way. Slice this up into vertical scopes, and then we're going to work through it. And the appetite is, how long are we going to spend on that? Now, we kind of loosely think about, like, we'd like to get about this much done. And so we want to spend 3 weeks on it, and we feel like we hope we could get about this much done. But the circuit breaker stops any additional work. And so we work through a project, and when you hit the circuit breaker, we're done. Now, does that mean you got like some half-done thing that just like goes on the shelf and you're never gonna hit it again? No, because we plan the next cycle. And if we're right in the middle of something and seeing good value on something, then you can pitch investing and continuing our bet on that thing. And after the 2-week cool down, you pick it back up and we can start working on the thing again. So that's how the betting table works. We take the stuff, we move it down, we then have a conversation. Mostly it's the head of engineering, me, one of the founders, and the CEO doing the talking. But we have people from anyone in the companies can speak up and ask a question, and they do. It's awesome. Or we'll ask someone right in the middle of the meeting, what do you think? Or share your thought on this. But we then rank these things and debate them around their reach and their impact. And then we take that information and put it over here and plan out our cycle. So we've got 6 weeks. We've got each of these things. Obviously, we can't do all of this because it won't all fit in there. And so then what you do is it ends up looking something like this. And we figured, okay, these are the ones that we're going to do. Those 2 aren't going to make it. They're out. And then we can pitch them again next time if we want. Or if something more important comes up, they are just sitting around for us to bring back again someday. Here's our last, we're in cycle 7 right now, on the right. These are the other 2 before that. I know that's teeny, you can't really see it, but this is how we track the work. And so you can see each of our projects that are going on. We've got 3 projects that are happening there. And then as we start doing discovery at the same time, we start linking in our discovery documents. We just started the new cycle. And so you can see over on the right, there's only 1 in there, but it'll start filling in as we're working on that. And then as we write the pitches start getting listed under here. So again, full visibility. Anyone in the company can come and look at these at any time, comment on them, provide feedback, and then those pitches will be what gets taken to the next vetting table. There's just a zoomed in view because I knew that would be hard to see. So this is our current cycle 7 that we're working on right now. And you can see we're 1 week in, and because I actually just took the screenshot yesterday. And so we're 1 week in, you can see the percentages, you can see, and how we track things too is different than a lot of people do as well. The first percentage there is figuring things out, the other one is making it happen. And that's as scientific as we get around it. And we let the team, and if somebody might say, well, what does that mean? How do I measure figuring it out? My answer to you is, I don't care. Tell me where you're at. Just tell me, where are you as a team? And so we might be having our morning huddle, because we do that tradition every morning. On Fridays, the team just debates it for a couple of minutes. Where are we at? Well, I think we're this, and I think we're this. And then QA always raises their hand and say, I don't think we're quite that far, because remember, done means deployed. And we've got more testing, because engineers always think, oh, we're gonna hit 100% when I'm done writing the last line of code. No, we're gonna be at 100% once it's actually been tested. And so that's where we get those percentages done. And you can see they add up, and that gives you our percentages for tracking the whole project through the cycle. This is our product feedback database. So we've got stuff coming in from internal ideas and feedback, external ideas from customers. We track it all here and tag it. It allows us to search it and pull themes out of it. We also have our research repository that I mentioned earlier. So anytime we interview a customer, go do contextual inquiry or just go and observe customers, we then come in and we take notes and write all of that in here, and then we tag it. It allows us to search through it all and pull themes out of it. And then this is the VOC meeting. So every other week between show and tell, we have a VOC meeting where we bring sales, customer success, and product together, and each one of them comes to the meeting with their top 5 things that they're hearing from customers, potential areas for innovation, areas where customers are struggling, and they present that. It requires you, it's a forcing function to narrow your list down to just 5 things that are the most impactful, and then we talk about it and we synthesize it and pull themes out of it. Talk about things that don't align with our roadmap. And then this is an awesome part too, the plan for the next 2 weeks, together with customer success and sales. We talk about what calls are happening. What are they doing discovery on this cycle right now, or the next 2 weeks that we need information on? What prototypes do we need tested? And so how can you help connect us to customers to arrange a call, or there's a call out already happening that we can piggyback on to go and test something like that. That's it. That's how we're doing product at Access. I'm now happy to answer any questions that you guys might have. I know we're really shy on time, but if you've got to run, don't feel bad jumping up. But I'm happy to do some Q&A. Yeah, go ahead.
Can you go back to the slide where you took the bets and mapped them to time on week 1 through 6, right there?
Yeah.
So a few questions about this. You had a quote earlier: "Bets, not backlogs." Is a pitch a bet? Okay.
Yep.
Good. And then is this for a single team, or is this for the whole company? Would you have this?
This is a single team.
Single team. So every team is going to have.
Each team has capacity to do one thing at a time for 6 weeks.
So go back one more slide. Okay, one more slide from that. Now this, when you're doing your betting table, are you doing one betting table per team, or a betting table if you had 6 teams?
Yep. That's a great question. So the reason these screenshots only show one thing right now is because we actually collapsed the team down to one team right now. So when we started this a year ago, we had 4 teams and they were small and it wasn't working really well. And so we collapsed it down to 2 and we were still feeling like it was running, so we collapsed it down to 1. So right now we're running one larger team and that's why you only see one of these.
So we're seeing one team.
Yep. But if you had 6 teams, you'd take all the stuff that's been committed to, you'd prioritize all of it here. You'd only do this screen once. And then once you get to this screen, you do this, you'd have a lane for each team and you take all of that stuff and fit it in. Now, this is something we're debating. There's some team members when we were doing multiple teams that didn't like that the thing they did discovery on might get assigned to a different team to do delivery on. And that does break a little bit of one of my principles where you should be delivering the same thing. And this is where I was kind of trying that out because I was saying, okay, well, I was looking at what Basecamp was doing, and I liked one of the things that they said, well, when I'm considering who's on vacation and who has expertise in this area, maybe it's actually better for this team to do it. Even though this team did discovery on it, this team would be able to execute on it better. And I like that. I also don't like taking it away from the team. Not just because they deserve to do it, but they have the empathy for it and the context of it, right? And so I don't know the exact right answer for that. I lean towards, but here's the problem too, is when you do all of this and then you bring the stuff over, it's not, because you only did this once, there might be a team that ends up over here with nothing that made it. Like what if they just pitch stuff that the business decided we're not doing? That means they're going to have to work on stuff that a different team pitched. So I don't really see any way around it unless you literally did this for each team. But I don't think you should, because I think that would be a mistake. Because then and we ran into this at Workfront all the time. Is a local, what do they call that? A local maximum? I think it's the right term. Where the team has their context, their area of ownership, and prioritizing their work. And it might be the next thing that they're considering doing might be the most impactful thing within their world, but that doesn't mean it's the most impactful thing for the customer and the whole business. And so I think that allowing them to do that is a mistake. You need to decide what's best for the whole business. So it's not a perfect world, not black and white. There will be people working on things they didn't do discovery. Yeah.
So wait, do you release the code after each pad is complete?
No, continuously. So each scope. So as we're working our way through the 6-week cycle, as soon as something is one of those vertical scopes is ready, it goes out the door.
It's like one of these blocks.
No, so those blocks are projects. And then inside those projects, we break those down as small as we possibly can. And so inside, as we're working our way through week 1 and week 2, we're rolling code. Each time we've got a little slice that we can. Yeah.
So you mentioned how there's no backlog, right? So in this case, these 3 would actually get implemented. The 2 would be put away to be pitched again at a later time.
Yep.
Right.
Or never.
Or never. Right. But what I'm interested in is, if someone is like, hey man, like I'm gonna pitch that again, do they bring the same pitch doc, like the old pitch doc back, or they have to rebuild a new pitch?
They don't have to rewrite it, create a new file in Notion, but sometimes they'll dust it off and there's new things have learned along the way, and so they might update it.
Right.
Yeah.
But it has to be pitched again.
Yep.
With the new ideas that are in content. Love it.
Yep.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's right here, you had something.
Yeah, you mentioned that this is collapsed from 4 teams to 1. Is that because this process lends itself better to larger teams? What was the impetus behind your collapsing process?
Yeah, most of it had to do with the teams were so small that they didn't have all of the resources they needed to get the things done. Which is interesting because it's kind of the opposite of Basecamp's approach. Basecamp, as I said, they put the teams together each time, and those teams are often 2 people. They're very small. They'll have just and their engineers are totally full stack, so they usually be an engineer and a designer, and they just throw them together, and the 2 of those crank that thing out. Again, Basecamp's kind of different. most big enterprise software, those two people don't have everything they need to build and ship something. You know, like even us, a small startup, we got back-end guys and front-end guys, back-end guys doing APIs, and we got front-end experts and things, and so it just, it wasn't enough to do it, and so it's been a lot better where we've got this whole team together and can execute each of those. Yeah.
You talked a bit about like user empathy during discovery and everything. Where do you stand on having developers there during user interviews? I can see like most sense yes, it builds user empathy, but also people tend to clam up when there's more people involved in the interview.
Sure. I don't think you should have a crowd there for sure, but engineers should be there often. I don't think that they need to be on every interview. You need them writing code. We need engineers doing what they do best. But boy, I'd say at least once every month or two, an engineer should be on a call and exposed to this stuff. Now, engineering leaders, I expect to be there more often than your individual contributors. But yeah, they should absolutely be there often. I think there's some cool tricks you can do with remote too, where you could have people that aren't on camera, or you can have a second Zoom going with that is watching the other Zoom, so that you can then have a team that's watching, and the person that you're interviewing doesn't even know that it's being broadcast secondarily. Yeah, one more and got one more.
Yeah, just can you talk about some of the challenges that you faced going from day one with this company and however they worked at that time to here, which is obviously a very involved system that requires tons of buy-in?
Yeah. Buy-in wasn't an issue. Had a CEO that recognized the challenges. We talked about them before he even started, just when we were seeing it was right fit, and knew they needed something different. And I proposed some of these things, and he was all in. So I know that's lucky. It was really awesome. So the challenges we've had have more been around it being a very different way of working for a lot of these people, and the whole vertical scopes thing, the whole fixed time variable scope thing is hard. And I will say, not just that it's different too, but people like to finish things. And that circuit breaker thing is hard. And it's funny too, because it's actually been harder for my engineers than the rest of the business. The engineers are like, I want to finish. Can you give me 3 more days? No, we're done. we have to stop. It's really hard for them. And I've been thinking a lot about that lately, trying to decide, is there something we should do different, or how should we deal with that? They want to finish, and I get it. I totally understand that they want to finish, but it requires us to plan more too. Because the first couple of cycles, we were running like this right up to the deadline. And then we got to the deadline and like, oh crap, we hit the circuit breaker. Are we gonna be honest with ourselves and really stop? Yes, but what does that mean? Well, crap, we haven't even QA'd this thing. We gotta get, because we were just like, and now we've been getting a lot better that it's like, hey, keep looking at the deadline. We're coming up on this. We've got a week and a half left. That means like we've only got so much time to finish because we got to QA that, and done means deployed. So it's like you can't be writing code on Friday. It's got to be done. So that's been hard, and it's taken work to get better at that. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So how do you mitigate when dev finishes on Wednesday and QA's got an extra 2 days? Like, what does dev do? What does design do? Because like, is there many waterfalls happening as this is going on?
There's always going to be many waterfalls, because nothing can happen in pure parallel, right? You've got to write code before you can test it. But we try to just because the vertical scopes, it allows us to sorry, I guess I should clarify one thing. As clean as it appears on the diagram, in reality, it can't be that clean. So like, you have the 3 projects, they do bleed into each other a little bit. We don't literally stop the one after 2 weeks and start the next one. And even inside of that, we break it up into scopes. We literally don't go scope, scope, stop. They bleed a little bit over it. And so, but I do push the team to stay true to that as we can, because it happens every single cycle. Where the engineers are looking at it and trying to be as helpful as possible. And they're like, okay, well, I see we've got these 6 scopes and design's starting right now. Why don't I go start working on the API down here and I'll get ahead of it and I'll start working on the stuff. And a little bit that is useful, but a lot of that is dangerous, because if they're going to get out in front of that, they may be working on stuff that either the requirements change, or we're never going to get to it. And so it's just a constant fighting that I don't know, entropy, whatever, the right word, the natural tension there of saying, guys, we're in this together. It is not waterfall. It is not design. It is not engineering, because engineering would love to just wait too. The natural tendency is like, I'm going to go work on something else until design figures it out. No, guys, that's exactly the opposite of the way that we want to work. We want to work on this together and figure it out and release that scope and then move on to the next one. It's a constant challenge. Yeah, constant challenge. So
We'll do last question and then we'll let people go, and then you can come up and talk to me after.
yeah, let's do that.
One more.
Yeah, so I'm wondering about your inspiration. I'm aware of Basecamp and they've been around for a while. Shape Up, I don't know anything about. I Googled it.
Yeah, Shape Up is the name of the book that
Oh.
Basecamp wrote
I
that
see.
described their process.
And is this inspired by that Shape Up?
A lot of it, especially the words. So the words that I use, like pitches and bedding table and circuit breaker, and all of that vocabulary comes from the way that they work. I'm using some of their things, like pitches and the bedding table, but a lot of the other stuff that I've presented to you is not the way that they work. Like, they don't do dual track, they don't do product trios, they don't do those things. So it's kind of some inspiration and some good practices that I took from that and came up with our process.
Cool. Thanks, Wade.